Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 56 of the Capitalist Corner. I'm going out on it. I did it. I got it right. And I
Two
didn't
days
even
in a row.
2 days in a row. I got it right. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who has his own show, The Rational Egoist, which you should be listening to. Michael, we're going to talk about The Rational Egoist in a minute, but we are all anxious to find out what happened at Porcfest. How did you do? How are you received? Do you think you made any converts from libertarianism and anarchism over to the Capitalist Party? So many questions, and please answer all of them.
Well, I actually had a very good time. I got to converse with David Friedman for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I've had him on the show. We debated him in DC, and he's just a brilliant, brilliant guy, no matter how much I differ with him. And his father impacted my life so much so that was great. I went and sat with a group of young, some of them were what they call themselves anarcho-objectivists. And I sat down with those guys and I talked to them for a few minutes. And lo and behold, there was a guy sitting right next to me. I've been trying to interview this guy for like 2 years. He's a young guy and he was sitting right next to me. So I was able to exchange information with him. That was great. I ran into Mike Termott, whom I also know. He's a really great guy. He was the Libertarian candidate for vice president this time around, and he left the Libertarian Party to caucus with the Republican. He joined the Republican Freedom Caucus. So I had a productive discussion with him. I mean, I can't get too much into it because it's private, but it was productive. I had a great debate with Jorge Basada. That's up online concerning ethics. I talked to a bunch of people, got the pamphlets handed out. I certainly wasn't disparaged by anybody. When I gave the speech, I had two main goals. Well, I guess three. The first one was to differentiate us from the Libertarian Party. The second was to show why we're better than the Libertarian Party. The third was to not alienate those libertarians with whom I think we can build coalitions going forward, because ultimately the goal is to promote capitalism. It's not to promote a political party. We just have this vehicle that we think is the best to do it, but that doesn't mean we can't coalition with others outside it. And I think I was able to do a good job of that. There were a lot of interesting questions about, somebody asked me about energy policy, which I thought was good. And I said, ultimately, we need to deregulate and unleash the power, of American industry. Along those lines, I got some good feedback from a guy. He asked me about the approach that we would advocate toward doing away with the welfare state. And I said, well, I don't think you can do away with everything all at once because you'd cause a lot of harm. So my point is you do it incrementally. And he said, well, legally, you don't have to do it incrementally. And he gave me a suggestion I thought was interesting. I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but he said private organizations can be set up that can deal with the fallout from ending the welfare state all at once. And I thought that was an interesting suggestion. One of the things that I differentiated us from the Libertarian Party on was our strong defense of intellectual property. And a guy asked me a question that I just don't know because I'm not an intellectual property expert. And I told him, I said, I can defend the principle of IP, of patent and copyrights. I cannot defend the current U.S. system of intellectual property because I'm sure it's a mess like everything else is. And he gave me a guy. He said, you should listen to this guy. He talks about one part of intellectual property. So it was a nice suggestion. My friend Subby, wrote down the information, so I'll be able to check that guy out. A lot of really nice people there. It was a great time overall. You plant seeds, Mark, and when you plant those seeds, you never know when they're going to grow. I was asked about ballot access and told how hard it is to get ballot access, told what an uphill battle it is, all things that, I know that it's an uphill battle. But my response to that is, well, I enjoy doing this and I want to live in a free society. So even if I don't accomplish it, so I could either do nothing, just sit on my ass and not accomplish a free society, or I can actually fight for a free society, which I do, which I enjoy, do everything I can. And, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if it wasn't going to happen anyway, what's the difference? I know it's an uphill battle, but I have to be optimistic, and I believe that we can do it. I don't think it's going to be an easy task. Maybe we fail, but I think we can succeed. And that was my overall message.
That's a good message. That's a good message. And yes, I think liberty is, as I've said a million times, is the greatest discovery since the domestication of fire. We need to go out there and be the vanguard for liberty. It's not easy to come by. It's very new in the world, compared to 10, 15,000 years of civilization without it. We've had a brief 150 years or so of actual liberty, and that was still mixed with some terrible cultural premises. We've never had pure liberty yet, but the closer we get to it, the better our society becomes. And we've seen the results with respect to, just the rising wealth of pretty much everybody in the world is a result of liberty. And that just isn't a material thing, folks. It's rising wealth overall. It's a happier life. It's access to more stuff. It's fulfillment. It's joy. These are the things that the American Capitalist Party strives for. When we say pursuit of happiness, we mean it. You deserve to pursue your own happiness and you not be an end, a means to somebody else's ends. But speaking.
Well, hold on one second. So Alan Thomas says the solution is having party members elected at local and state levels first to build the access. Yes, and I put that out there and I talked to them about that, but I was informed that I didn't know that in some states, in order to run at lower levels, you have to have a gubernatorial candidate also, or you can't get ballot access. And in some places, you actually have to have a presidential candidate in order to get the gubernatorial candidate. So there seems that there's a lot of blocks put in the way to prevent third parties from succeeding. But it all comes down to convincing people. If you convince enough people to change the rules wherever you can't get ballot access, that's how you end up growing. It takes work. We're willing to do it. And that's why we're here. And by the way, we're up to, as of this morning, 374 followers. Yesterday's episode got somewhere around 700 or 800 views. So I'm pretty pleased with the way the show's going. I think it was a good time over there at Porcfest. I think we've got a bright future.
I agree with you. That's why I prefer not to focus on the lawfare and the idiocy and the obstacles that the duopoly will throw at us. It doesn't matter, folks. We have a good message. We have the right message. We have a principled message, and principles beat pragmatism every time. And plus, we have somebody running for local council in August. The very Alan Thomas who spoke there will be running. He will be on the ballot. As far as I'm concerned, he's going to win, even though he's going up against the good old boy world over there in Alabama, where sometimes political aristocracies and social aristocracies can sometimes have sway. I think he's convincing them with just ideas that they need to get out of that old way of doing things and come into the new way, the Capitalist Party way. Speaking of freedom, though, Juneteenth. There was a great article in the Daily Economy about Juneteenth. I want to wish everybody a happy Juneteenth because in the spirit of this article, I want to say this was the true end of the Civil War and the extension of civil liberties to all human beings in the United States of America. Imperfectly so, no doubt. We still have a long ways to go with respect to understanding what all of that means. But it certainly is a worthy holiday to be celebrated. It's taking us a step closer to the principles that Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence and taking us that much closer to liberty. Unfortunately, the movement has been co-opted by DEI, and many people associate Juneteenth with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is now losing, which gained political steam for a while, and then, of course, exerted its tentacles all across the business world, now is being widely rejected. But along with this wide rejection of DEI, which should be rejected, in my opinion, is a rejection of Juneteenth as a legitimate holiday. I think it's a legitimate holiday. I think it's I wouldn't call it the second Declaration of Independence or the second second revolution for sure, but certainly an extension of the arc of freedom, the way it needed to be done. And we're still working on that to this day. What say you? I mean, I hope that Juneteenth does not become a casualty of the Trump administration's war on DEI. I hope it actually sticks with the American population as the holiday that deserves to be universally recognized as an extension of liberty to all people. What say you?
First, I hate the idea of holidays. Or let me be more specific. I hate the idea that we have these days where everybody gets time off because of a holiday. I think that should be entirely up to each employer. I certainly don't think that government officials, like, I'm not working today because all the town halls are closed for Juneteenth. So I think that part of the problem is when you create holidays that give people the day off, people then lobby for holidays. And I think it takes the purity out of it. I'm all for holidays in the sense of celebrating things. Celebrating the 4th of July, for instance, I think is wonderful. But just as an excuse, I mean, look at Memorial Day. Memorial Day is supposed to be to remember those who have fallen in war. And somehow it is turned into, and I'm guilty of it myself, you know, let's have a cookout and have all kinds of fun, jump in the pool, have some beers, you know, as we get our day off. And they'll often move a holiday. If it occurs on a day they're getting off anyway, then they just move it to the Monday or to the Friday to make sure people get off. So that said, I first heard of Juneteenth, I think in 2018 or 19. I was watching the show Blackish with Anthony Anderson. And they talked about it. And I said, wow, why have I never heard of this before? Because I do think it's a great thing to celebrate. And a guy on my Facebook page this morning, Jeff Shipman, said it's a great holiday because it demonstrates America's ability to self-correct. And I think that's a great way to point it, because you start off, right, with these ideals that we're aiming for. And we certainly weren't there at the beginning, and we've, you know, had a lot of sidetracks. But as long as we have that North Star, that Declaration of Independence, we can always go back. We can always bring ourselves back to the line that we're on. And I think Juneteenth is an excellent example of that. And I think that it should be celebrated. And if you look at, for instance, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, which is another reason I will not be a member of that party ever. Ever again, I should say, is because they point out, oh, look, today is the Juneteenth, the holiday where Black people celebrate being slaves and the fact that they were allowed to be born in a wonderful country. And it's just, you guys are just such dicks, right? You're just such petty dicks. Now, you know, in their favor, finally, the Libertarian National Party, I believe, has severed ties with the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. But I've been seeing stuff coming out from them as long as I've been on Twitter, which is about 2 years now. So clearly there's a lot of jerks. Now, the role that DEI plays, whether or not DEI actually alienates people from the holiday, I do think that programs like affirmative action or DEI do provide an excuse to oppose things like Juneteenth. At the very least, it very well may push people over the edge. I'm sure there's some people that it does, but it also provides legitimate ammunition, because you say, look, you don't really want racial equality. You don't really want equal rights. You want special favors. And that's never a good idea. Frederick Bastiat wrote in the law that the worst thing that can happen is when a country has been oppressive, is then to switch and go in the other direction and allow the formerly oppressed to now become oppressors. Not to suggest in this country that Blacks are becoming oppressors. I'm simply saying that by giving them favors in terms of affirmative action or DEI, and of course it doesn't just apply to Blacks. I just use them as the ready-made example because of, you know, Juneteenth. It's just a problem. I think we need to stop that shit.
There's sort of a racial industrial complex.
Yes, your Al Sharptons and Jesse Jacksons of the world. Absolutely.
Been very destructive to racial relationships. And I might add, has never trickled down the benefits that these individuals seem to get by, you know, exploiting race issues. It's never trickled down to the poor dude, to the person living in the ghetto or the housing project. None of that political power or wealth has trickled down to them. It's certainly made the careers and reputations of a few shysters out there, but that's about it. The New Hampshire Libertarian Party. I mean, what a group of pinheads. I mean, because you really can't argue that this is a beautiful moment in American history. Whenever there was a time when Americans were able to correct its course or set its conscience right, the way Frederick Douglass would do and say his 4th of July oration, where it took an incredible amount of cashews to stand in front of a predominantly white audience and say, this country's great, but here's what's wrong with you, and to expose the hypocrisy of American culture that should be living up to the ideals presented in the Declaration of Independence and living up to the principles of the Constitution, and yet weren't. That was a great gut check, which makes Frederick Douglass one of the greatest on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned.
His autobiography is great, by the way. Narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. Jim Valliant is in the audience today. Let me just tell you about this Jim Valliant. This guy is such a hard worker. 7 o'clock this morning, right? I'm reading, doing my thing, and I get a message from Jim. Hey, can you talk? It occurs to me, he's in California. It's 7 for me. It's 4 for him. 4 o'clock in the morning, this guy's up getting at it.
Well,
is that's awesome
the way we roll. That's the way we roll. I love that. And
he's a boomer like you. He's not a spring chicken.
Yes, I get it. Well, I like you have issues with holidays too, because I don't like taking time off. I don't like being told to take time off, but I do think there's a time and a place to sharpen the saw, right? I do think there's a time and a place where you need leisure, you need to relax. If you look at the Fountainhead, really there's only one guy in the whole book who was able to take leisure time and completely relax, and that was Howard Roark, because he was one of those almost Zen masters who could be completely engaged and perfectly happy in whatever he was doing. When he worked, he was working. When he relaxed, he was relaxing. His mind was never split. And there's a place and there's a time and a place for that. And on today, I think it's important for everybody to look up what happened on June 19th, 1865. I think it's important for people to study up on it and to prime their conscience with what happened there, and to understand that this isn't a day foisted upon us by the United States, just an excuse to go out and barbecue or whatever it is you want to do. It's actually a time of self-reflection. And you need not take off work. You need only take 5 minutes to say thank you for extending the umbrella of rights the way it needed to be from the very beginning. But, you know, folks, we make errors. We're human beings. New ideas come up in the face of generational ideas, and those generational ideas are very hard to unseat. They take a very, very long time to get rid of, and there's usually a great deal of confusion and argumentation about what's right. Even nowadays, in the 21st century, I think very few people understand what the concept of rights actually means, and that's one of the reasons we're in the fix that we're in. Speaking of fixes, which comes right along with this concept of rights, here's a claim. This comes from the AP that you sent me. Medicare and Social Security go broke dates pushed up due to rising healthcare costs and new SSA law. So, of course, we've been told for decades that there are no funds. They even say there are funds here. The Social Security fund, the Medicare fund. These funds do not, in fact, exist. The original idea behind Social Security was that the government would put aside a certain amount of money for you so that in your retirement you wouldn't be poor. The illusion, of course, that carried over from the Great Depression was that older people were poor. In fact, the actual statistical evidence suggests that the older you are, the richer you are. And so now, at the time, it was a direct consumption tax, but there were lots of taxpayers to pay for very few beneficiaries. There was no fund. It didn't go into anybody's account. these monies that were taken from folks, it went to general spending and was usually siphoned off to other deficits and other issues. So it becomes a direct consumption tax. Now, when this Social Security first happened, there was something like 100 taxpayers for every recipient, or something like that. Now it's a nearly 1-to-1 situation.
Because of you boomers.
Because the boomers are retiring now. The employment situation, of course, for the Gen Xers and millennials is a little bit sketchy. The taxpayer base is much less than it probably was before. And so now we have a nearly 1-to-1 ratio, which means the young people are essentially subsidizing older rich people. So the account is about to go bust. They say it's going to go bust in, what did they say, 2030, 2035, 2035.
Maybe it was 5.
It got pushed up. It got pushed up to like 2033 or somewhere
soon.
So within the time that I am supposed to quote unquote retire, which I do not plan on doing, the account will go south, which means that you will get 81% of the benefits you were promised before. Now, my own financial advisors have told me that's not going to happen, Mark. What they're going to do is means test you out. So all the money that I have put into this to subsidizing old people since I was 15 and a half years old, and that's quite a lot of time in the workforce to be subsidizing folks, is now only going to come back to me. I'm going to lose 19% of my investment. And that's just the investment itself. Let's forget the fact that when you actually invest money, you earn interest and actually make capital gains. In the case of Social Security, I'm losing. I will be losing. And the mean testings means that I will probably be tested out, which means I will get zero benefits. Zero benefits after putting all that money into the system. They also said there's a possibility of a 100% tax on Social Security, which means I will get a check because the government has to pretend like it's satisfying its obligations to send me a check, but it'll just be for zero.
Do you remember the lockbox?
Tell me the lockbox.
When Al Gore was running against W, he came up with this idea for the Social Security lockbox, where all the money went into this box for saving, and it'd be locked so no one could get to it. And Saturday Night Live, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Daryl. What's his name? Daryl something. He used to be on SNL. I don't know. But it was funny, and he comes, and they had the debate. They did the stage debate on SNL. It was fake. He walks over, and then the character who's playing W finishes talking, and the guy playing Al Gore just looks at him and says, "Lockbox." It just made me laugh. The Liberty Movement was attacked for trying to privatize Social Security. I mean, they did nothing when Bush was attacked for it. Well, first of all, Bush wasn't trying to privatize Social Security, right? Bush wanted to allow people to take, I think it was 2% of the money that they were being robbed to go into Social Security, and Bush wanted them to be able to. Daryl Hammond is the guy's name. Yeah, thanks, Ian. They wanted him to be able to take 2% and invest it in something else, but it was going to be very limited. Bush specifically said no day trading. So, I look, any movement toward privatization, I was for it. Don't get me wrong, but Bush was not, despite what his critics said, he was not trying to privatize Social Security.
No, and there's no political will, and the politicians are simply reflecting what the American people want. I mean, you will see conservatives who probably consider themselves constitutional conservatives, whenever there's a threat to Social Security, marching out there, "Don't touch my Social Security." They want these welfare programs as well. And so it's up to us to try to convince them that not only are they impractical, but they are immoral. And that's going to be a tough sell, because we've had generations upon generations now dependent upon these welfare payouts, Social Security in particular, which does not encourage all of these government programs, folks, disincentivize good action, right? I mean, they promote a spendthrift attitude. They promote not moment to moment thinking, as opposed to planning for your future. I mean, think about that. If you think, well, I've got this stipend coming at the end of my life, I really don't have to save. I really don't have to do anything. I've got money coming to me at the end of my life. No, well, never give your moral agency over to anybody else, first of all, and never let somebody else save your money for you unless you understand that they know what they're doing and they're going to do it in directions that you want them to. So this is a corrupt. This whole thing is corrupt from the very beginning to the end. And Medicaid and Medicare are going out in, I think, 2034. They're done. They're done by that time. So anybody dependent on state Medicaid and or Medicare, you're in trouble. Now the problem with that is I think when you hit 65, you get forced onto Medicare. Do you not?
I don't know. I'm nowhere near 65, so I have not yet begun to look into it. I'm very young. I'm not, I understand that you're studying this and you're very up on it because it's like next week, but not for me. And let me just say, I'm looking, I can see myself here in the reflection. I bought this shirt at Porcfest. I got 3 for $20. I love this shirt. I'm looking at it. I love the coloring. This type of blue with the black neck thing here. I absolutely love this shirt. I know it may not be relevant to the discussion, but I can't help it. I'm seeing it in the reflection here, not in the reflection, the video. I think I'm in a mirror, for God's sake. I'm obviously not. But, not to digress too much, but if anybody else likes
I have to save my dog.
If anybody else likes my shirt, I'd really, I'd love to get some feedback on it because I really enjoy it. It's also very comfortable too. I think it's 100% cotton, which is a nice feel. It'll shrink, but it's still good. Now, Mark has abandoned me once again. The microphone is hiding it. The microphone is not hiding the entire shirt, Greg. I understand it's hiding some, but you could still get the colors. You could see the colors. And looking sharp, Lebo. That's what I was looking for, Greg.
Yeah, but see, if you had blue eyes like me, it would bring out your blue eyes. Unfortunately, you don't. So you don't get the double. You don't get. Yeah, look at that. State. Nice. Okay, I'll take it.
No, Mark. Actually, though, I have hazel eyes, which are far more unique than blue eyes. Hazel is very few people have them. So many people have blue eyes. They're all over the place. And it's still up to debate whether or not those are contacts on your part. We don't know. We just don't know. We don't have someone following you around. So Race Jacobson says the Free State Project is being sabotaged by the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. I believe that. I never knew this until yesterday, but the Free State Project was evidently started in response to the Libertarian Party. I thought they were, working hand in hand, but I guess they're actually not. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're being surprised by those New Hampshire Libertarian guys.
Well, they seem to be irrelevant, and I don't mind anything that hobbles the Libertarian Party and brings those more freedom-minded folks over to the Capitalist Party.
Well, that'd be great, but Akira Felix is casting aspersions on my eye color here. Akira, I'll have you know, you can't really see the hazelness of my eyes in this format. But if we ever meet in person...
So what good is it?
Because I do see people in person. I don't just exist here, Mark. I actually go other places.
Your eyes don't pop in the film. They don't pop. So
no, in person they do. And I'll tell you, I would be shocked if upon meeting me.
Is that like saying I did really well? I did the audition really well in my car.
What car? See,
look, I'm telling you, your eyes don't pop here, so nobody cares.
They don't pop here. It doesn't matter. If Akira meets me in person, I guarantee Akira will be gaga over my, oh, look at this. Did you really just take off your glasses so that you could try to show off your eyes? Is that what just occurred here?
You're a paranoid man. I took off my glasses because my eye itched. Am I supposed to scratch my eye through the lens?
Yeah. Key Jim Valliant. I'm sure he'll be coming in any moment to tell us how wonderful Mark's eyes are.
Well, he has taste. What can I say? Look, something from the CBS News came through, folks, that I think is important for us to talk about. Lawmakers move to limit Trump's war powers as Israel-Iran war escalates. What do you think of this, my friend? The president has according to the Constitution, I don't see the president doing anything wrong with respect to the Constitution as it goes now. But there is a War Powers Act of 1973, in which the Congress can have more control over what the president does with respect to ordnance and troops. He still has a fairly wide latitude. And what do you think about him using some of that latitude to assist Israel in defeating the Islamic jihadist regime in Iran?
I oppose the War Powers Act. I think it's an unconstitutional monstrosity, and I think that you can play word games all we want. When you are using your military to strike another country, you're engaged in war. And like it or not, the Constitution grants Congress the power to declare war, not the President of the United States. Congress, in just another instance of abdicating its responsibility, as it does over and over again, has given that power to the president with limited range. But I don't think that it should be at all. And that's independent on whether or not I think it's smart for the president to bomb Iran. I don't think that he has the authority to do so.
But the Constitution does give him rather wide latitude to use the military without congressional approval.
Where?
Particularly in instances like this, where he's not necessarily committing troops, but aiding another country that is in the war to defeat a power that is a threat to us as well.
Where, Mark, does the Constitution grant the President of the United States the right to launch an attack?
I didn't say granted him the right. I said it granted him.
Where? Okay, I'll ask again. But where?
A wide degree of powers. Hold on a second.
Makes him commander in chief of the armed forces. But the commander in the chief of the armed forces means he tells them what to do once war has been declared, not whenever he wants. He can't wake up for breakfast and send the Marines to Guatemala because he feels like it.
That's true. He cannot. But I wanted to let me just reiterate the war powers. Okay, so this is according to Grok. U.S. Constitution grants the president significant powers over the military's commander-in-chief, Article 2, Section 2. But these powers are balanced by Congress's authority, Article 1, Section 8. Below is here's a concise overview of the president's actual powers. The commander-in-chief, as a president, has broad authority to direct military operations, including deploying troops domestically and abroad, ordering military actions such as airstrikes or special operations, managing the armed forces' strategy and readiness. Rapid response, of course, the president can act unilaterally in emergencies. This is somewhat of an emergency, such as responding to imminent threats or attacks in the U.S. interests, embassies, citizens abroad, etc. We are in that state now because Iran has threatened such things. Executive actions, the president often rely on executive orders or inherent constitutional authority to conduct limited military operations without prior congressional approval. And we know this has sort of been a precedent set for many years after
Sure.
Yeah. The president's executive authority over commander-in-chief of the military has been expanded quite a bit, which I disagree with.
Sure. And Jim Valliant says he need not wait in a crisis. The problem with that is who defines the crisis. The president has said we have a crisis of immigrants coming into the country and is using that as an excuse for mass deportations and rounding people up.
Yes, he's declared emergency in order to gain executive power. But when you have a power actually threatening, as they have, the United States, not only over the decades, but now recently, that they have threatened that they will start attacking American troops. I believe that they said that if America attacked,
and they already
have that, but they already have.
Yeah,
they already have shot missiles at people at our guys in Syria. So through their proxies. So as far as I'm concerned, they're at war with us. And if we loan a bunker buster or two to Israel, we're not doing.
That's not the question. The question is, does he have the authority to bomb another country as the president, or does it require a declaration of war?
And that is a contextual question, which requires whether or not it is an emergency and whether or not that emergency merits him taking immediate military action.
Yeah. First of all, the Constitution doesn't say that. That's the first thing. So Jim can come on and tell us about your dreamy eyes all he wants. The Constitution does not say Congress declares war unless there's the
Constitution does say the Congress declares war But
No,
the
it
president
does.
does have the authority. No, I know it does say that, but the executive does have the authority to act in an emergency. So can
It
he
says
bomb
that in the
another?
Constitution.
Can he bomb a country? It's within the inherent powers of the executive as commander in chief of the armed forces. It doesn't.
According to whom? According to whom? Where in
According
the Constitution? Where in the
it
Federalist
doesn't.
Papers?
It
Where in
doesn't
the
say that.
Constitutional Convention debates? Jim, I want the great Jim Valliant, because Jim is going to wiggle out of this with his idiosyncratic method of constitutional interpretation is what's going to end up happening.
He has the emergency powers to deploy troops and to potentially bomb a country if it is indeed an emergency. Now we're not talking about a Trump emergency, which he declares every 10 seconds in order to grab executive power, but one in which American troops have already been assaulted, already been murdered, already been bombed by this regime.
I'm going to explicitly get out Article 2 of the United. No, that's downstairs because I brought it with me. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it was good to have it.
You're going to take out Article 2, Section 2, and you're going to read it straight out to us.
The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. We don't need to know any of that. That's just all.
Wait, before you continue, James Valliant says something that just makes absolute sense, and I'm not saying it just because it's James Valliant. It acknowledges occasions when he cannot wait for Congress.
Yeah,
dude, that is the founders recognizing that they are going to confront situations where they cannot go through the bureaucratic.
Hold on a second.
In order to deal with
hold on. So we have then been in an emergency situation with Iran for 50 years.
We are in an emergency situation with Iran right now.
So hold on, but no, because nothing has really changed except for Israel's attack them. So if you're saying that when another, so
everything. If you're saying nothing has changed except Israel's attacked them, which has changed everything. In fact, it's changed lots of dynamics in the Middle East and Iran's reactions to us.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the problem. Here's the problem with Jim's. Hold on. There is no context to be dropped. Section 2, the president shall be commander in chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into actual service to the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. It does not make exceptions for the case of declared emergencies by the president. There are things where it says he has to come to the defense of states when they're invaded. Are we really going to make the argument right now that Iran is invading the United States?
Are you going to make the argument that Iran has not attacked American personnel? They have not attacked American interests. They have not attacked.
I'm not saying that at all. But I'm not saying that at all. But the Constitution.
Are you going to say that they haven't?
You're setting up a straw man. You're setting up a straw man.
Are you saying?
I'm saying there's no invasion. I'm saying there's no invasion.
They've never attacked American soil.
That's not what I said. I said there is no invasion. There's nothing occurring right now that constitutionally grants the president that right. And if you're going to say that, okay, but then were we invaded by Saudi Arabia on 9/11? Are we invaded by every country who has jihadis who come over here and launch terrorist attacks? I mean,
in effect, those are proxies for those countries. This is an irregular type.
Okay. So we've been
founders could never have imagined. And do we have the right to take out their sponsors?
Hold on, Mark.
Yes,
quick question. So here, and this goes for Jim as well. So if we are indeed being invaded by Iran, which would be the type of emergency required, can the president then suspend habeas corpus right now? Are you for that? Are you saying that
I'm not for the suspension?
No, I'm asking you. Would it be legal right now for them?
I am not for the suspension of habeas corpus. Period.
Well, no, can they do it legally right now? Because we're being invaded by Iran.
I didn't say we were being invaded by Iran.
But that's the situation.
I said, have we ever been attacked by
But that's
Iran?
not relevant. That's not relevant to the Constitution.
Attacked American citizens and or attacked
Jim,
American.
Mark.
Now
That's
you're
not
confusing me with Jim.
No, I'm telling you that telling you what the Constitution says, what it grants the president authority to do, and I'm under the case of invasion. Then we can go to war. He can act, but we're not being invaded. And if we're going to allow for broad constitutional interpretation because we happen to favor a significant result, guess what? That's what everybody does, and that's why we're in the mess we're in now.
I do not favor broad interpretations of the Constitution, by the way, but I do think that the president should have the authority in this case to do something to help Israel defeat an enemy that is the enemy of the world, not just of the United States and Israel, but an enemy of the entire world.
I wish we had Jim on here. So Jim says the Constitution, obviously, Jim, I know that, and I know that the Constitution grants Congress more than just authority to declare war. What it does not do, Jim, is grant it the authority to delegate its authority to the president. If I'm wrong, Jim, cite it, please.
In this case, you are right with respect to every other power the Congress has delegated to the executive branch, which I think should be rescinded because they have certainly given up their legislative authority over the last 75 years. So I'm all for Congress taking back the power that it should have and hobbling the presidential authority. But I want bunker busters.
I just got this freaking thing here. I hate when they do this to me.
Yes. What is that?
They come up and make offers to me. Google, get out of here. It says, okay, I got to hit not interested. Whenever a lot of times I'll search for something. Does anybody know about this? And they come up and it says, continue with Google. And they want me to give them information.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the way it works. Now, James says it can regulate the military. POTUS has authority with military. This is not like taxes or commerce.
Cite it. I'm just going to say cite it. Show me where it is. Show me where it is that where Congress can delegate the power of war to the president. Just show me.
It says it can regulate the military, but POTUS has authority with the military.
That's what he says. I'm saying show me. Of course it is. You're saying that with the War Powers Act, they're delegating the power to use military action to the president. And I'm saying
the War Powers Act is a different thing. That gives the executive a great deal more authority.
But is it constitutional? Is it constitutional? That's my question.
I'm not a constitutional authority, but I would say no.
Okay. Well, then you agree with me. All right. So then the people who want to, like Thomas Massey, for instance, who want to, Jim says he wishes he was here. No, Jim, because you would take over the conversation. We can't have that.
Jim, give him the link. Give Jim the link.
Jim, I bet you Jim's got to go anyways.
We need James here. He's the constitutional authority on the subject. What were you going to say? Yes, Massey wants to push in the same way that Rand Paul does.
In Tim Kaine, right? Now
they want to push more congressional authority, but I think in this case it's a bad call. I think overall it should definitely happen. In this case, it's a bad call.
Yes, Congress can provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. We're not being invaded. We are not under an insurrection. It has the power to provide and maintain a navy, and it can make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. That's not the same thing. What Congress can regulate the military is not the same thing. It's delegating power of war to the president.
Ultimately, Michael, regardless of all this, it has the power of the purse, and if it chooses to, it could defund this stuff if it wanted to.
Sure, and then
that's its ultimate regulatory control over the executive.
That they could do, and then they would be skewered. So Ann M says, but all branches have acknowledged the War Powers Act as law. Sure, and all branches have acknowledged the federal government's authority over immigration. All branches have recognized Social Security as constitutional, Obamacare as constitutional. So just because they do it, we're talking about a principled stance. That's ultimately why this argument matters. I'm very well aware of what the country has become as it's strayed from our founding principles. The argument is about what those principles are and how they're embodied in the Constitution, and whether we should actually be adhering to the Constitution as written and not according to the interpretation of politicians and judges with ambitions for power.
I agree with you. And here Anne says something I think is very interesting. Iran's nuclear breakthrough was akin to putting us at risk of invasion. Not invasion, so to speak, from their Praetorian Guard, but certainly ballistic missile that could reach the United States or some city with a warhead on it is a concern. And certainly selling that.
It's not an invasion. You can't say a risk of invasion. It doesn't say risk.
We're living in a world right now where you have to admit that asymmetrical warfare is sort of the rule of the day. We no longer are armies lining up necessarily in the field and battling each other out for a definitive winner. They have cells within countries that operate. Look at what the Mossad has done within Iran. They have not technically invaded Iran, but they have done more with their irregular warfare within Iran. Technically, they are inside.
I feel like I've gone. Listen, I feel as if I've gone down the rabbit hole, stepped through the looking glass, and landed in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Well,
a threat of invasion is not the same thing as invasion. I sent Jim a link. Jim, I sent you a link, by the way. If you want to come on, pop on.
Do you think that a threat, which that you consider, any reasonable person would consider the threat, that the threat would be followed through with actual violence, it gives one the right to preemptive force? So if you meet me in a bar, let's say you and me are at a bar, and you say, when you go outside, Pellegrino, I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm going to kill you when you go outside. Now, do I have the right, if I punch you in the face or I knock you unconscious or I do something to you, am I within my rights?
You're asking two separate questions here. One has to do with what the Constitution authorizes, and one has to do with what is morally acceptable. Now,
but preemptive force against something like Iran,
I would say, if you were going to strike, unless the attack, here's Jim Valliant, unless the attack is imminent, then no. And there is no threat of imminent attack. In fact, our own intelligence agency just said, I think in March, that Iran's not even close to having a nuclear weapon. So, I mean, and they have no desire to do so. Now, I tend to think Tulsi Gabbard's full of it. But my point is that you cannot have the president of the United States, first of all, say that there's an emergency. Secondly, declare that there's an invasion because they are close to getting a bomb. And third, then say, okay, we're going to strike, and still tell me that you're adhering to the Constitution of the United States, because we are not at that point. Jim Valliant notwithstanding, and I don't care how he stares at me with those puppy dog eyes, he is wrong on this.
James.
And it has to do with this nuanced method of constitutional interpretation.
James.
No. It doesn't. The Congress has the power to make the law of war and peace, and it has to cover all the range of possibilities. So not just invasion, not just insurrection, which it acknowledges the president can act without waiting for Congress. You know, back in the 1700s, it was even harder to get Congress together. So they're recognizing that the Congress should want not only to declare war, but to declare under what circumstances short of war, even short of an invasion, the president can act. Congress cannot take from the president the plenary powers that it gives the president in Article 2 to be commander-in-chief of the military. So they work together here. The president does not have plenary power when it comes to taxes, commerce, the post office. So when the president acts in that regard and Congress delegates power in those respects, it's total BS and unconstitutional. However, Congress can say, there are situations short of invasion, short of insurrection, that could call for a president to act in emergency situations. But they can't say he's not the commander in chief. They've got to say, under those circumstances, the president is the guy in charge. So I think the only fair reading of the Constitution is the president has such plenary power. No, he can't declare war. I think that would be unconstitutional. I think what we have, all these wars that we have fought that have been undeclared, are unconstitutional. I can believe that. At the same time, I can believe that it's perfectly constitutional for the Congress to make a rule that says, when there's ballistic missiles out there that may get nuclear tips on them soon, the president can act. And the War Powers Act in general was designed in the wake of the Vietnam War to limit the president's power in this regard, by the way, which was acknowledged to be much broader before that. So the War Powers Act says the president has 48 hours to report to Congress, and then Congress has 60 days to put thumbs up and thumbs down. I think in general, that's kind of so long as it's not an extended war, I think in general, that's precisely the kind of power that they were giving Congress in Section 8 of Article 1 to be able to give to the president under his powers under Article 2 to be commander-in-chief. You got to put these things together. You got to read the Constitution as a whole. You've got to read them as interactive. You can't just take out of context one little bit here and one little bit there, Michael. It's a complex.
Hold on. Okay. Now, no. Now, hold on. Now, first of all, my girlfriend coming into the chat to say that we have 3 sexy guys here. Like, what is going on? That's the first thing.
Well, we have at least
fantastic taste. That's what's going on.
Eyes, I gotta say. As to the color of your eyes, Michael, I'm not sure.
Mike.
Listen. Here's the thing.
Before you go on, you've just been dropped. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah,
okay. You got dropped.
Big surprise that you say that. But the problem is when he says that the president has plenary power over the military once war is declared, it's the same thing. He has the executive authority over enforcing the tax laws once they're enacted. He cannot enact tax law on his own. You simply cannot. You can say no
about taxes in Article 2, Michael.
Hold on. You can't. No, he has the executive authority to enforce the laws of the United States. Regardless of what those laws are, the president is the executive. His branch is responsible for enforcing the law. It just like his branch is responsible for governing the military in case of war. But Congress has the authority to declare war.
Regulate the army.
Hold on.
And it's used. There is all kinds of military powers.
There is nothing there. See,
to grant letters.
I didn't interrupt you even once. What is happening here?
He's trying to correct you.
No, he cannot correct me. He cannot correct me because you will not show me one single article in the Constitution, one single debate that took place in Philadelphia in 1787, one single sentence in the Federalist Papers that says that Congress can delegate its authority to launch attacks outside of the context of invasion or insurrection. You will not find that anywhere in any of those discussions. So to say that, well, yes, but it's interrelated and means that, when the entire system is based on checks and balances. Now, Mark is right. Congress ultimately can refuse to pay the bills, but they fund the military for 2 years at a time. So if they've already funded it, I don't know when the last time they did that. I believe it was recently, but I'm not positive. If they've already funded it, then that's not an option. And Jim says for prolonged wars. Well, what do you think happens if we hit Iran? Do you think that, okay, we're going to step back and say that's over? That never happens. Not in situations like this.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah, but that's not what they're going to do. So
really?
We're not.
You psychically know this because Bush did something else?
No, I know this based on 200 and some odd years of American history. And I know this based on what the government does. So if we're going to wager, are you going to wager, Jim, right now that Donald Trump, and this is a separate question from constitutionality. I'm just curious on what you think. Do you think that Donald Trump is going to his administration competently go after Iran's nuclear program and they're going to do it efficiently and then it's just going to stop? Are you really confident in Donald Trump's ability?
I think that Trump is only contemplating a limited strike using those bunker buster bombs. I wish it would go farther and get rid of the Ayatollah.
Yeah, I agree with Jim.
Contemplating. He changes his opinions based on the last person that talks to him.
Well, no one can predict the future, and humans have free will, but I'm willing to make a bet right here and now, Mr. Liebowitz, that if Trump does something in Iran, it will be a limited airstrike against the military, against nukes, and I wish, but it won't happen, against the Ayatollah himself.
And I'm willing to tell you right now, I would stake, I don't want to say that because it's a family show. I would stake significant on this, that whatever they do, it's not done competently and efficiently.
Well, that's the case with most government. But I think that Trump does.
Of course it is.
Hold on a second. I think that Trump does have limited ambitions there. I think in part because a huge MAGA base is non-interventionist, and he made a promise to them, a massive part of his base, that he would not get us involved in a foreign war, allowing Israel to use bunker busters to take out nuclear facilities.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. I can't. Like I'm in La La Land. Just recently, listen. There's literally. No, hold on 1 second.
Right now.
Hold on.
Crossfire right now.
It doesn't matter. I have to respond. You can't just go on and on that forever.
I want to throw something by you that Alan Thomas said, and I want to see if you guys even think this is a possibility. I don't think it is. I don't think China wants to get involved. But he says $5 says if U.S. sends bunker busters, China will employ its quantum radar to locate it and prevent the B-2s from delivering it. I have
no idea. I have no clue if that's going to happen. No,
sorry.
But what I want to get back to is the point that I'm trying to address here. Literally, I think there's an article in your stack how Trump, he's a hardliner on immigration, which MAGA wants. Then he hears about farmers having a hard time. He switches his mind and says, we're going to stop going after him. Then he talks to somebody else and he switches his mind back. That's on an issue very important to his followers.
He went back to his base. He did exactly what the base.
But in the meantime, he switched policies. He switched tactics. If he does that in war, it's a disaster. And it's not the first time this has happened. All of a sudden, the two guys who know this guy's an incompetent, immoral dick think that that's all going to change because you don't like Iran? Come on.
No,
this is insane.
No, there's no question he's an incompetent dick. But in this case, if he does, I'm worried he won't do anything at all. And people do have free will. He can change his mind about, I'm sick of it, unconditional surrender, all the other noise that comes out of that guy's mouth is not to be believed. If he really means unconditional surrender, you go after the Ayatollah. I don't trust him to do that. But if he does anything at all, it'll be a limited strike because of all the isolationists in his administration.
Let's face it. Right now, I think most of his
they're talking about getting rid of Tulsi already.
Most of his threats, and most of the posturing is for one thing: is to try to intimidate the Ayatollah into making a deal with him, which is what he ultimately wants.
And they're not.
That's why we know. Yeah,
Mark, you are always correct. That is absolutely correct.
And that's a big problem too. That's my whole point. Is he's a dick. Now here's the thing.
Yes,
I want to tell you guys something. Yeah. So a guy says he agrees with me, but it's just conjecture. Of course, it's conjecture.
But
we're talking about the future.
More incompetent than Trump? Iran.
Yes. They're all incompetents with very powerful weapons. But Trump is already talking about getting rid of Tulsi because she said that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. So he's done this in the past.
IRCC, the UN already says it. Iran admits they're doing it and said they refuse to give up their
enrichment. Guess what? Saddam thought he had weapons too.
Days or 2 weeks.
Saddam thought he had weapons too.
Israel thought he had weapons, and they went
working on it.
That was in the. I'm talking about in the 90s when we went in. Netanyahu has been saying that Iran is like weeks away from a nuke since 92.
Not only that,
so you were wrong about Iraq. You got burned, and now you're taking it out on every president in the future. Got it.
I know. I've learned a lesson to be skeptical of whatever these people say.
It's not only our administration talking about it. It's not only Israel talking about it.
It wasn't only them talking about Iraq.
Talking about it. They finally.
Yes. I do. Hold on.
Reprimand to Iran after 20 fucking years. They are close. Iran itself is saying it. Even if Iran is posturing just to make itself appear powerful, so that it's been so weakened, it deserves the punch in the mouth.
Hold on. There's a good question here. Anne asks a great question. Nicole, wait a second. Anne says, was Israel right to hit Iran? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No question.
There's a lot of reasons that we can't get into, but I do want to ask you guys, because we're just about out of time, but I think I want to hear what you two say about this. And then we can go back to arguing. I have all day. I'm not working.
I don't, but you guys.
What do you mean? So you're going to bail?
I got a buddy. I have a no-gi.
Jim, defend him on this like you do on everything else. Here's the
If
thing.
the man has to work, the man
Oh,
has to
bullshit.
work. Okay.
Codswallop. So listen, I'm watching Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson going, having their discussion. And it turns into, they're talking about supporting Israel, and it turns into a theological discussion about whether God in the Bible is telling people to stand by the current state of Israel. This is a sitting United States senator and a top voice for his wing of the Republican Party, meaning Tucker Carlson. And they're talking about whether we should support Israel based on what the freaking Bible says. Are you kidding me?
It's a confederacy of dunces. Hey, look, we can argue this a lot, but the capitalists, I've just been reminded by Greg Lewis, the capitalist thought of the day has to happen. And Michael, it's on your watch right now.
And bullshit it is. I did it yesterday.
I did it yesterday. What?
No, you did not. I'll go get where do you come up with this stuff? You try to stick it on me every time. You know what the only really fair thing to do is? I'm going to tell you. You want to know how to deal with this fairly?
Wait, I want to ask the audience, do I try to stick it on him every time?
All the time. Yesterday.
Or
Monday.
The fact that
hold on.
I thought I did it.
Yeah, Tuesday, it was your first day back in like 4 episodes, and you're like, yeah, it's your turn.
No, Tuesday I did it.
Yeah, because I wouldn't fall for it.
No,
so hold on. So wait. So Tuesday you did it? If Tuesday you did it,
that means Wednesday you did, so Thursday is my turn. You're right.
But I think we have a fair resolution to this.
What is it?
I think Jim has to do it.
Jim. Yes. All right, Jim, you have to give the capitalist thought of the day today.
Capitalism requires a government that protects liberty. We are not anarchists. Capitalism means a government not for business, not against business, but one that protects individual rights, does the responsible thing in defending American citizens, American property. The framers envisioned a president who would act in America's interest with its military. It gave Congress the authority to regulate that military in very many ways, broad ways. We absolutely have to have, and with a government like Iran that has killed more than 600 Americans just in the 21st century, directly killed Americans just in the 21st century. And we go back 47 years, it's even more Americans, hundreds more Americans that they've killed. It is that kind of situation for which a capitalist government is needed.
Amen.
I love you guys. I love you guys.
Amen to that. Likewise. So, James, we have to continue this argument at another time because we are actually over time. Unless you guys want to continue the argument without,
I'm going to get to work. Jim and I have a lot of debates in the offing. We've got some big episodes coming up on the Rational Egoist, which everybody should be watching.
Yes, definitely watch the Rational Egoist every chance you can get, folks. Your IQ will increase exponentially just by watching it. I will be here tomorrow, even though I'm traveling. I don't travel till 12:15, so I'm going to be able to make the show. At which point, I will do the capitalist thought of the day.
Yeah.
Just remind me because I might forget and put it on.
He's traveling. I'm traveling too tomorrow.
Okay.
So do I get some kind of a health benefit from like what? I'm traveling, so
I'm just letting you know that even though I'm traveling from across the country, though, man, I'm traveling from LA with my 18-and-a-half-year-old dog. You're just taking
on a cozy flight in first class.
You're taking a scenic drive
in first class. I'm driving in a Honda, dude. You're taking a first class flight.
I am taking a first class flight. I will be eating a nice gourmet meal and thinking of you every minute of the way. And folks. Remember to come here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, James, for lending your wisdom. You're right, as usual. You did a mic drop moment there. Completely obliterated my very good friend, Michael Liebowitz.
You see how they team up on me? You see?
Great as he
not paranoia.
He has nothing on you, buddy. And so you have, of course, carte blanche to come on the show anytime we need your expertise. Until then, folks, we'll see you tomorrow. So remember to check your premises and bring your questions and your Q&A, which is Q&A day tomorrow. So bring your questions. Until then, peace.